Well, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today on how to nail your college essay. I promise it's not as violent as it sounds, but we're going to be talking a lot about what makes a college essay work and give you some tips on how to possibly tackle this problem of the college essay. But first, I'd like to introduce myself, and I also have a colleague on the call with us as well. But I'll go ahead and go first. My name is Josh Wilkinson. I'm an associate director of admissions for communications at Bucknell, and that absurdly long title really means I'm an admissions counselor here. I do read a lot of applications. The communications side of that title means that part of my job is to manage our communications flow. That includes emails, that includes websites, that includes print materials. I lovingly joke it includes everything with pictures or words. So definitely familiar with editing text. And then before coming to Bucknell, I actually was a creative writing major in college. I went to a small university called Union University, and also went on to law school, and which I did a lot of reading and writing there. And then I've been in admissions for about 8 years since that time, starting out in law school admissions. And so I've read a lot of essays. I often joke that I could speak for an unlimited amount of time about essays. And so I get that opportunity to do that with you now. And so Kristen, I'll actually let you introduce yourself. Oh, and one thing I did forget too is that my territories here at Bucknell are going to be Long Island and then North Pennsylvania, Northeastern Pennsylvania as well. Kristen?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Morrow. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. This is going to be really fun. I am an assistant director of admissions at Bucknell. I've been here for 6 years. My husband's an alum. We got married on campus, so Bucknell's been a big part of our lives for a lot of years. I too love reading college essays. Josh is our in-office guru on all things essays and writing. So you're getting really good quality instruction and advice. But this is going to be fun. This is very necessary, and it's also a really key part of the application. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some really good information, some good tips to help you in this process. So I'm going to be in the background answering questions. So if you all have questions during his talk, I will be in the background answering them. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Chrissy. And so I appreciate the kind words, and now we have a high bar to aspire to today. So I appreciate that. So up front, the too long didn't read, or the skinny as I like to call it, these are kind of the top points that I'll be covering today. And so if you get nothing out of this at all, like at least you can take away these 5 points with you. And so first off, we're going to talk about your audience, who your audience is, maybe how much time they have, maybe what's important to them. The audience being the people that are privileged to read your essays. Also, you want to give yourself enough time to create an essay that you are proud of and that obviously gets you connected to the college of your dreams. You also want to focus on storytelling. You want to be able to tell a good story. The essay is a unique opportunity for you to tell the university a little bit about yourself and do it in a way that is compelling. You want to be able to share your story. And when I say share it, I mean sharing it before you submit it. And so you're going to be sharing it with people to help you review it and edit it before you submit it as part of the application. And then, of course, finally, we'll be talking about proofreading, the ever important thing, the step that you absolutely do not want to skip at all would be obviously proofreading. But first things first, I do like students to be thinking about themselves, frankly, and get excited about it, because I mean, I know myself, and essays can be tedious. I mean, writing essays can be a chore sometimes. And so for me, what works is getting myself excited about what I'm about to do. And so I would encourage you, before you even try to start writing an essay, is to find a topic or a question on the Common App or the Coalition application, something that sparks a light for you, sparks a fire gets into you somehow that you're like, oh yeah, actually I can write about this and have a little fun with it. Because honestly, if you're excited about what you're doing, then it's going to end up better. And if you're not excited about it, how excited about it will your audience be? I think it's pretty obvious, at least for me, when I write something that I'm not that excited about, it may come off a little dry, a little boring. But if you're writing something that is important to you, that's something that you enjoy, it really comes off, and that passion really does transfer over. And before we really get into the meat, I do want to do an exercise here, so bear with me. I do see that some people are able to show video, but what I'd like us to do, if you have a piece of paper, a pen, a pencil handy, or even maybe an iPhone app or something, is to draw the absolute worst picture of a horse that you can. And just so you're aware, I'm not going to cheat you here. I'm actually going to join you in this. So don't think that for a minute that I'm going to get away from this exercise. So what I'd like to do is take a couple minutes and draw the worst picture of a horse that you can. And the key here is to not let yourself be good at it. Is try to make it absolutely horrible. All right. All right. So pencils up and let's draw. So why did I do that? Another key for me when getting started writing an essay is to allow yourself to fail, sometimes spectacularly, sometimes on a Zoom call like this. And that is really a key tenet of writing, is to allow yourself the option to fail, to give yourself permission to be terrible, okay? And I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive. I tend to be a perfectionist. I tend to be kind of OCD about writing, about anything. And it's really hard to get started when you're in that mindset. It's really hard to do anything when you're in that mindset. And so giving yourself the permission to write a crummy first draft, and maybe something that you've heard already if you've read a writing book or something like that. I know others, public speakers have talked about the importance of a crummy first draft, and it's absolutely true. The key is when you sit down to write is to write, and you want to get rid of any obstacles that are in your way. And perfectionism is absolutely one of the worst. And I promise you, this is the longest slide that I have. I tend to go with short slides, but this is an important quote. And in fact, this quote has become honestly like a steam engine for my own creative life. And it's from Anne Lamott, who's a fantastic writer. And she says that perfectionism is the voice of the oppressor, the enemy of the people. It will keep you cramped and insane your whole life. And it is the main obstacle between you and a crummy first draft. Only she didn't say crummy. I think perfectionism is based on the obsessive belief that if you run carefully enough, hitting each stepping stone just right, you won't have to die. The truth is that you will die anyway, and that a lot of people who aren't even looking at their feet are going to do a whole lot better than you and have more fun while they're doing it. And so what I would encourage you to do when you sit down to start the essay writing process is to allow yourself to have fun, allow yourself to fail, allow yourself to draw the worst horse possible. And if you can't draw a bad horse, I recommend that you apply to the studio arts major here at Bucknell. So the first thing we want to do once we get past those basics is think about your audience. And contrary to popular belief here, Gandalf is not doing research on the One Ring. This is actually a self-portrait. This is me, January, in the middle of the application reading season. This is what your audience is feeling like. We have to read a lot, and we have to read it quickly. And oftentimes it feels like we're in a cave and we don't see much sunlight. And that is your audience. And you want to keep them to the forefront of your mind when you're writing your essay. Applications are read by human beings, and that's something that you need to think about. It's not an algorithm, it's not a wizard. It's going to be a human being who has a limited time and patience sometimes. These human beings are likely under strain, and you want to be thinking about that as you write. And honestly, college counselors, it depends on the university, but they could be reading anywhere from 10 applications a day all the way to 100. And they could be spending a few minutes on your application, up to 20 minutes. It really depends on the institution. It depends on the day. It depends on many factors, on schedules. But the bottom line is that you need to assume that your reader doesn't have time. And so what that means is you don't want anything in your essay that will make them pause, that will make them stumble, that will make them think twice, because they need to be in a flow and getting what they need out of the essay. Now, since we work at Bucknell, I can share with you at least our point of view, like at least what it is like here. So we read applications in pairs. And so Kristen and I may be on a team and we'll be reading them together. And the way we do it here is we read every part of your application, including your essay, and we kind of split it in half and share with the other person what you're reading. And so the essay is part of that. And we read about 30 to 50 applications a day, kind of depending on the day. For me, it tends to be a little bit slower at the beginning of the reading cycle. But as we kind of get going and I get used to the rhythm again, because I hadn't read applications for 8 months or so, then it tends to get closer to about 50 applications a day. And frankly, these universities have to meet a quota if they want to be able to get their decisions out on time. And so that's why it's so important, and that's why it's so quick. And so that averages out to about 8 to 14 minutes per application, of which the essay would be a portion of that. And so your essay might be read in a minute or two. And so you want to think of that in the back of your mind. And if you're not sure how the university handles essays, I always ask, because every university is different. I just happen, to hear, and most my colleagues read essays. I have heard of some larger institutions that just don't have time to get in the nitty-gritty of the essay, but do understand that many, if not most, schools do read them. And I know we do here at Bucknell. It's an extremely important part out of the application. And so, like I said, we don't want to have to reread things because we're reading enough as it is, or stumble over something that's not correct, or be confused. And so what's more important than looking smart or impressing us is to write with clarity, to be honest, to avoid mistakes, and also consider the format that you're writing in. And so the temptation may be there to impress us, to write something dense, to use a thesaurus, to showcase your amazing vocabulary. But at the end of the day, what you need to be conveying, you need to be communicating to your audience what your essay is about. And that's more important. And so you want to consider those things. And then when I mentioned format, one thing I do want to mention is that sometimes what will happen is, I don't know if it's students will copy and paste their essay into an application, but what will happen oftentimes is that there'll be a big block of text, and that's what it is. And I personally hate it. I think it depends on the reader, but I have a hard time reading a big block of text. I like there to be paragraphs, and clear breaks. And so that's something to consider for sure is after you paste it into Common App or what have you, you want to make sure that the formatting looks correct. And so the next step is you want to give yourself plenty of time to do it. Even if you're someone like me who may be inspired by procrastination, I talked a little bit about, you want to excite yourself, get yourself inspired. But if procrastination is one of those things, you might want to put that to the side, because the more time you have to do it, the better your essay will be. It's just a fact. It's one that I've had to grapple with. You don't want to be down to the wire because frankly, you won't have time to do the proofreading that you need, and obviously to share it and get the feedback that you need. And so, this is going to be your first step on your journey of adulthood. And the joke for moms and dads is that we buy ourselves our own gifts. And so this is your chance to be an adult and buy yourself a gift. Get yourself the gift of time. And I guarantee you that it's going to be really, really helpful. And what that means for you is you're going to have more leeway and more options and more time to tell that good story, more opportunities to share, edit, and proofread. And I'll just share, I guess, a tidbit of, my own story of an essay that I wrote. So when I was applying to graduate schools, it wasn't college, but it was graduate school, and I had an essay written, and I was just kind of going down the list of my schools, and I was applying to all these schools with pretty much the same essay. I think I may have tweaked it here and there for the different schools. And then something terrible happened. My university, which I was still at the time, I lived off campus, was hit by a tornado. And I knew right away, and I had all my friends were there. And that night, it was probably late at night, 10 or 11 o'clock. I drove to the university right after it got hit by a tornado, and about 30% of the student housing was in shambles. People were pouring out of the academic buildings using their cell phones as flashlights. It was the most frightening experience of my life. And And honestly, like cars everywhere, academic buildings damaged. And I was just looking for my friends, and I saw my university in a different light that night. I had an experience that I was not anticipating. And that night I went home and I wrote a different essay. I wrote a very different essay. And it was the essay that ended up getting me into the school that I wanted. And so that's just an example of what that time can mean for you. So if you've already gone through the motions of writing an essay, you've done it, maybe it's okay, but then suddenly inspiration will strike you and you're like, nope, this is better. This is it. This is the one that I want to use to represent me. And you want to be able to have that buffer for yourself. It's like I said, you want to get inspired. If it doesn't interest you or excite you, will it interest me, the guy who's sitting with a stack of applications? I'm not sure. And so you want to be thinking about that. And what's more important, as I mentioned before, then a good information, this is a great meme to demonstrate that, is a great story. And so at the risk of beating a dead horse, I will move on a little bit. But you do want to make it personal to you. And that's going to be another key element of good storytelling. Because at the end of the day, we are reviewing you. It's all about you. And this is your opportunity to be selfish. That's another thing that's hard for me personally. I just feel like, if I talk about myself, like that just seems so tacky. That's not what people value, but that's what you're supposed to do on the application. If you don't tell us that you're doing it, we don't know. We are limited to the four corners of your application, and your essay is an extremely important part of that. We are looking at you, not your grandpa, not your brother, not your sister. So don't fall into the trap of writing about someone else and making the essay about them. You can absolutely include other people in your story. So a good example that I see a lot is maybe you have a sibling who's had to overcome a disease or something, and that's really impacted you. And that's great, that's personal, but sometimes you might fall into a trap of talking more about that person, the sibling or the grandfather or whoever. And so at the end of an essay, sometimes I catch myself being like, okay, well, wow, your sister sounds great. What about you? And you don't want to be in that trap. And so make sure that your essay does reflect you at the end of the day, that it is you ultimately that we're looking at. And like I said, you can absolutely integrate other people in there, but just make sure you reread it and figure out what it is that you're displaying to us. Obviously, you want to start strong. I think that's something that they teach in writing classes in high school, is to start with great leading sentences, leading paragraphs to kind of get our interest in immediately. Because frankly, sometimes we'll be reading really quickly and maybe we'll summarize it and get an idea of what it is without really getting sucked in to the story. And it's when we know a story is good, we know. I mean, you lose track of time and, oh, wow, this is great. I really want this kid to come to this school. I could really see them doing well here. And you can really relate to what it is they're trying to tell. And how do you relate to what it is that people are writing? It's by showing and not telling. And that's another obvious one. But it's true. In fact, I almost forgot to put it in here because I just think, oh yeah, you show don't tell. It's pretty standard, but it is easily forgotten. So when you do tell a story, don't just tell it. It shouldn't be a laundry list of actions. It should be showing us what's going on. And that's just good writing, and that is the way that you're going to want to write your essay as well. This is a big one as far as another good way to tell your story is to avoid cliches. And what that means is avoiding the topics that are the dead horses, to be honest, like the ones that we hear over and over and over again that you may not be aware of. But there's some stories that I joke that, we should be playing admissions bingo. And then the course of the day, I'd be like, oh, today I got a story about overcoming athletic injury. Today I got a story about the mission trip, and so these are the kind of stories that are more typical. And so, for instance, I mentioned the sports injury is one. Overcoming a sports injury, I mean, it could be a good story, but it's a very common one and ones that we see a lot. The same thing with, say, a mission trip where you go to a third world country for the first time and you think, oh, I'm going to be impacting these people. And then you realize that you're the one being impacted. Yeah, that one's pretty typical. I had the exact same story, by the way, so I'm not picking on anybody but myself. So those are some examples. Another one for Boy Scouts, there's that trip to New Mexico that I think most of them do, and that's a pretty common one. So try to avoid these common stories. Try to find something that is a little bit more unique to you. If you don't have that, don't worry about it. At the end of the day, the quality of your writing and what you're saying about yourself is more important. But these cliches can be distracting for people that read 50 in a day, and 10 of them may be very similar. That can be a problem that you definitely want to avoid. All right. And so next up, obviously, you're going to want to share your story. And what that means is share it with somebody to give you feedback, also to correct grammatical errors, and also other errors. I know one of my favorite stories about errors that you may not think of is sometimes students will include the school that they're applying to in the essay, but then they'll forget to change it for a different application. And so, someone might apply to Bucknell saying, oh, and that's why I can see myself doing well at Penn State. And that isn't just for the essay, that goes for the entire application. I've seen it in letters of recommendation. I've seen it multiple places. But the essay, if you have somebody kind of help you go through it, I think that might help you get out of that mindset. Because I think some students, they'll be like, no, it's this school or bust. But then they might bust their other chances because they include some kind of obvious error like that. And the key is you need to get somebody who can speak objectively about your essay. So who are those good people to share it with? I would recommend, and the counselors here would recommend your high school counselor, the one that's helping you whittle down your college choices if you have one. And that person obviously is going to be really good at helping with your essays because they're helping other students with their essays and they know what other students are doing. And they also have a history of schools and they know what kind of applications work with some schools and what kind of applications they haven't seen work. So that person I think is extremely important. If you haven't already befriended your counselor at your school, I highly recommend you do that. I'm going to tell myself again, I wasn't very good at that. So even if it's just getting your name on there, you really want them to get to know you because also that person will be writing you a letter of recommendation to the school as well. And so it's great that they can touch a couple of different parts of your application and not just one or two. And then a teacher is a good person as well, particularly English or somebody who's good at writing or who reads a lot. History could be good as well. Somebody that could give you some really good feedback on the grammar or the style of writing, I think would be great. And if you don't have the ideal person, that's fine. The point is that you want to share it and that you need to be receiving feedback. That's really it. If you don't have the picture perfect person, it could be your buddy that you just trust or whatever, you absolutely need to do to share it. Parents, you can work in a pinch. The reason why I hesitate with parents is because they tend to be biased. They tend to like you, I know my parents thought everything I did was amazing, even if it wasn't. So use them with caution. They can be very helpful. And then the other thing you want to avoid is letting people rewrite pieces of the essay for you. Because at the end of the day, it needs to sound like you. Sometimes I'll get an essay like, wow, this doesn't really sound like a 17-year-old high school student. It sounds more like a 45-year-old banker or something. The language that they use and the phrases that they use sometimes may not sound like high school. Maybe if that's you, that's fine, absolutely. But just be mindful that we really are looking for essays that sound like you, that sound personal. And this is my favorite one, is to proofread. And I joke here, I have to hit a meme quota, by the way, or else my 12-year-old daughter is ashamed of me. So I think I'm almost there. And in case you aren't aware, this kid in the picture here is seeing dead people in the movie, not typos, but it works. It works. But really, I kid. This is probably the most important step because your audience is going to notice typos. They're going to notice grammatical mistakes, and they're going to make note of it. To be honest, so that's usually one of the. I hate having to make notes about grammar and mistakes and stuff, but that's one that we consistently include in the notes when we read an application. And when that makes it into the notes, then everybody who sees that application afterwards is going to see that. So it's extremely important that you proofread it, that you have somebody else proofread it, and that you do it again when you put it into whatever application you're going to put it into. Because again, that formatting might get messed up, or maybe it didn't paste correctly. And it's always obvious to us when that happens. So make sure that you don't skip that step. at all and make sure that the blob of text is not something that happens. And so those are going to be the key factors to be thinking about when writing your essay. Some extra things. This is a piece of advice that I might put with a little bit of an asterisk for you, is reading some sample essays. And the reason why I would put an asterisk next to it is because I think I'd prefer to write whatever I want to write first and then look at sample essays, because sometimes I find when I read a bunch of things, I'll tend to just kind of want to steal what other people are doing, or it'll be influencing what I'm doing. So maybe come up with some original ideas from you and then look. But if you have no idea where to start, I think it's always helpful to see what other students are doing. And honestly, I wanted to give you a list of places to look, but there's too many to name. And so a quick Google search for sample college applications essays will bring up many great options. I noticed the College Board itself, who runs the SAT, they have some great sample essays where they even have feedback included. Some schools, I think I saw one from maybe it was St. John's University. They included sample essays with some feedback. And so seeing those, I think, would be helpful. And I think there are publications out there as well where you can get a bunch, just to give yourself an idea of what a successful essay looks like, and maybe where there might be an essay that you think is successful, but then be surprised to see the feedback from different college counselors. To be honest, I think that can be surprising for some people. And so we have to do another exercise. I mean, and what's a presentation without a cat? So what I'd like to do is take just another 2 minutes to write about a cat. And so I'm going to pause the recording again here and give you guys about 2 minutes to write about a cat. It could be a cat that you know. It could be a cat that you love, a cat that you hate, a cat that you just made up from your imagination. And so if everyone has a picture, their story of their cat, just kind of read it over real quick. And if you didn't, that's fine. But the point with this is whatever you wrote, no matter how it came out, no matter how bad it is, how good it is, nobody else in the history of time has written those words about a cat. Nobody has described a cat in quite the way that you did just now. And that's pretty cool. And I would encourage you to take hold of that a little bit and just give yourself permission, again, to fail and to be yourself. And this is a cheesy dad joke here from the genie, to remember to be yourself, right? And that's really something I want you to take away from this at the end of the day. No matter what, be yourself. And that really kind of ties in with how we read applications here at Bucknell and how we review essays. And I'm going to ask Kristen to come on again. And what we would like to do is share how we feel about essays, what works for us a little bit, what we like, what we don't like, maybe some examples of our favorites. So Kristen, are you there?
I'm here.
Yay. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So this has all been really good, and I've had a couple thoughts that I wanted to throw out there, and we've had some good questions too. So I do have a few tips, maybe some advice to give. The primary thing is be creative and be compelling. Be creative. We read so many essays, and the common theme with all of us is if you make it creative and you make it compelling, that is better than any championship or something that otherwise seems grand. The grandest thing you can do is to make it creative and make it compelling. Allegories are good. I remember reading an essay where the student compared life to a plane ride, to getting on a plane and taking a trip somewhere. And I still remember that essay. It was absolutely wonderful. It didn't really say anything grand or anything, life-shattering, but it was creative and it was compelling, and it was a really neat essay. It also doesn't have to be profound. So I remember reading an essay about a football player who I would imagine he was a hulking offensive lineman just by the way he portrayed himself. And his most meaningful thing to do was to go home and take care of his grandmother every day. And it was so simplistic. That is not a profound thing. It's incredibly simplistic, but his essay was written so compelling and creatively that I still remember it. It was wonderful. And then I would also say, absolutely do not write as if you're texting. Do not. That is a huge turnoff. And I know it's not just Bucknell, but other admissions folks have said, capitalize the I's, don't do run-on sentences, make sure you've got periods in there. Do not write as if you're texting. And also avoid the word like, as in, I was like angry. Don't use the word like. Take those out. And I would just say in general, don't be colloquial. Be fairly formal. You don't want to be stiff, but you don't want to use language like you would use when you're texting. And I would also say, like Josh was saying, check your grammar, check and recheck, because even though those are details, they're still details, and this is your chance to present yourself as excellent. And so you want to put everything in your favor. Have your guidance counselor check it, have your teachers check it over again. And then after you've checked it 5 times, check it again. Just to make sure that everything is good. So I would say the primary thing is to make it compelling, make it creative. Sit back and really think about what you want to say. It's your opportunity in the application to represent yourself. A lot of the other elements of the application, like your transcript and recommendations, those are all done for you, and you can't control those things. But the essay is something you can control. So take that opportunity. Start early, do crummy first drafts, crummy second drafts. But this is your opportunity to tell us about you. Don't tell us what you think we want to hear. Tell us what you want us to know about you. Tell us about things you're interested in. Tell us about an experience that happened to you that reflects you. It'll give us a window into who you are and what makes you tick. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, just to mirror what Kristen was saying is I kind of wrote down some examples that I could remember, and they were all what Kristen described. They were all kind of mundane, a little offbeat, but they're very personal. And so a few that stuck out in my mind as a student wrote about a keytar and playing keytar. And that sounds unexciting, but the way she wrote it was so clever. It was so compelling. And I really got her personality out of the essay. And I was like, I finished the essay and I thought, I want her here now. Like she's so fun. Like I could see how she can contribute in all these different ways. Another example, a guy started a snail farm in his backyard. It was just sort of this weird curiosity project he had. And he went into detail about what he did to feed the snails, to give them shelter, to do all these different things. And the other cool thing is that it made sense in the context of his application, because I think he was applying his biology or something like that. And so I thought that was really cool and interesting. And again, it wasn't incredible. It was just like this really unique thing that this guy was really, that was really important to him. And we remember things like this. I had another essay example where a student, he was a fitness instructor on the side, but loved to bake. And for the life of me, I couldn't get this image out of my head, because he was all about baking and it was the most uncliche as you can get. And lo and behold, when I met him after he was admitted, he was what you would expect, a big buff guy working out. And the first thing me and my colleague said was, "Can we have cookies?" And it's just like, you remember these people sometimes because of the essay. And here at Bucknell, we do it holistically. It's a holistic review, and we don't have an interview process. That way, it's sort of an even playing field for everybody who applies here, and some students just can't make it to an interview. And so the essay is your interview. The essay is your opportunity to the way I put it is for me to get the heartbeat of a student, to kind of figure out what makes them tick, to kind of give a sense of them. And so it's the personal part of the application. And so it is very important. And the importance of it, because we're holistic, depends on the applicant. I mean, sometimes it's the essay that pushes the applicant over the top. And sometimes it's the part that drags them down. They may be a great student, but like, I just don't get a feeling for them or whatever. The essay is that piece that seems to push students one way or the other sometimes. When you have so many students that are qualified and they have, do so many amazing things, the essay oftentimes is what separates them. All right, and so we have some time for questions. Kristen, I'm gonna, I guess, let you pitch them to us here. I don't know if we had any questions in the chat or not. Be happy to answer those for you. All right, you're muted.
Yep, sorry. We do have a bunch of questions, and I did answer a few. We have a new one here. Oh, that's just a comment. One of these questions, though, Josh, I wondered if I could get your take on this.
Sure.
Does the essay have to be a story, or can we just write about a particular interest?
It doesn't. So when we say storytelling, it doesn't mean that it has to be a story the way you would think of it, like a movie or something, or a novel or something like that. It can be absolutely about an interest. And Kristen, I think you gave a great example of describing something like an allegory, and those can be extremely interesting. Some that I found fascinating are essays that might describe their family. Maybe they have a very interesting family and the connections between the family members and what's important to them. I remember some that maybe describe the way the dinner table is and the dinner table operates at home. And so it's not really a story of like things that happen in sequence. It's just sort of like describing a very important piece of their life. And that's absolutely fine. When we say storytelling, I think what we mean is compelling. Kristen, is kind of the word that you hit on is a way of telling us something. And it doesn't have to be plot. It doesn't have to have like an intricate plot or anything like that, or characters or actions, but it can be describing some part of your life that is just important to you. That's absolutely fine. That's a good question.
Yeah, here's a good one. Whoops, it just jumped on me. Hold on. What about talking directly to the person reading your essay? It's informal, but it would make the essay stand out. I can take that. And then Josh, I'd like to hear your feedback
Sure.
on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have seen essays like that, and I personally really like them because it's different. It's different, and I like it. Josh, do you have any feedback on that?
No, that's a good answer. I think I agree. It's, if done well, I think is the key, because I think sometimes it may not be executed, but I agree for the most part. I think it is interesting, and I kind of like that breaking of the fourth wall, right? And so you're actually talking directly to your audience, and I kind of like that idea of pushing all this to the side, like, no, I'm going to be genuine, and we like genuine applications, and so it really fits in with what the essay does. It's sort of your chance to be genuine and to be personal, and so I think it works great. But you definitely, obviously, still needs to be well done and follow all the rules of clarity and grammar and everything. But yeah, I can see that working absolutely.
Mm-hmm. This is a good one. If an opportunity appears in the essay, it just jumped on me. Hold on. If an opportunity appears in the essay, is it a good idea to try to make the audience laugh? And I would say absolutely yes. We all have humor. And even though this is reading an application is a fairly formal process, what a great thing to laugh in the middle of it. As long as it's appropriate and it follows all the grammatical rules and all of that, absolutely make us laugh. Yes, because you stand out, and make sure it's going to be humorous to all people, yeah.
Yeah, so I would just say, yes, please make us laugh. Sometimes we need it. But yeah, like Kristen said, that you obviously want to be appropriate or maybe sensitive to political issues, because you never know who's reading it. But humor is great. And the reason why I started laughing is that I think I laugh. I have two different kinds of laughs while I'm reading an essay. One of them's not a good kind, and the other kind is it's humorous, and that's the good kind. The not good kind is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that mistake happened. But yeah, I think humor is great. In fact, that's why I brought up that keytar essay it was hilarious. I mean, I couldn't believe I was reading it. This person was showing not only like a genuine interest in guitars, history's lamest instrument, right? But doing it really well and humorously, kind of making fun of herself while doing it. It was amazing. And so I absolutely encourage humor if you're able to deliver that, for sure.
And see, Josh remembered that essay.
Yeah.
About the numbers of essays that we've all read through the years. The ones that we remember for him is one that made him laugh. And so, here's another question in the interest of time. How do you figure out what is the best format, first person story, description, etc., for your topic? And I would say whatever works best for you and whatever's going to come across best for you is the one that you should pick. And maybe if you have time now, if you started now, especially during summer break, if you're sitting by the pool or whatever, do one of each. Write one first person, write one as a story, write one as a description, and then see how it goes. But remember that word compelling, right. Creative. So. And
you'll, in doing that exercise, you'll discover maybe what your strength is, because I think I am a better narrative writer, but if I try to just describe something, I'm not very good at that, and so you kind of discover which area is good for you. And then the other thing that it's sort of I think sample essays would come in handy there too, because you can see what other people are doing and what you think works and what you think would fit what it is you want to write. I know, like Stephen King, some writing advice he made was, if you want to write novels, read a lot of novels. And I think that's where it would come and play here, is if you want to write an essay that's like really good, maybe read a lot of essays and see what people are doing and see what works for you and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another question is, are rhetorical questions something to avoid? Josh, I'll let you take that one.
Are they something to avoid? I mean, I think my short answer would be, I don't think I hesitate to say that there's any style that's completely off limits. I think rhetorical questions could work. I'm having a hard time thinking of examples though. Kristen, can you think of any, I can't think of an example of a rhetorical question in an essay.
I can't think of an example, but I guess off the top of my head, I would say make sure, yes, you could write about a rhetorical question, but make sure it reflects you, so that it's about whatever the rhetoric is or whatever the issue is, because then we end up finishing the essay and not knowing more about you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, is that sometimes you get on these side trails because of the format or how you decide to write it. And I could see the rhetorical question going that way.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know why I can't think of a specific instance of someone using it. Maybe that's a sign. I don't know, but
yeah.
But I think it's just not important as far as what you eventually, like, the way you write it isn't as important as what you're conveying and how you're conveying it. And so I think that's why sometimes it falls to the side. It's like, I'm sure I read many that were great, but it wasn't because it was a rhetorical question, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, here's a good one. Can we write an essay talking about our favorite childhood movie and how the characters connect to our personal lives, connecting it to a bigger picture? And I would say to James, yes, yes, yes. You could your favorite childhood movie, especially when you draw those characters into your own life. Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
in fact, that's a good example of an essay that would be compelling. I can also see how it would be an absolute bomb. Don't use it creatively. So think about your favorite childhood movie and connect it to your personal life. Absolutely connect it to a bigger picture. Yeah, that's a great example of a good essay topic.
Yeah, and I think the key with all of these questions is, again, like, it could be anything, but if you execute it well, then it's great. Mm-hmm. But if you don't add the layer of depth, the layer of personality, I guess, mm-hmm. That you need, and then it won't work. So anything can be, botched, I guess, is sort of the fine print. But yeah, as far as just the format, that could work. I think the only asterisk I'd put on that is try not to talk so much about you as a kid, but where you are now. Because sometimes it's, people fall into the trap of writing too much about where they were when they were age 5 or 6, that may not be applicable to now. And so I think that would absolutely work, but just try to tie it to your current life and who you are now, I think would be the key there.
I think one of the general themes that we're trying to say is we want to know who you are, and we want to know what you love and what you don't love. We want to know what you're all about. And even if you're at a point in your life where you're just kind of confused, you want to go to college, you should go to college, you want to go to a great place like Bucknell, that's wonderful, but you're undecided, that's okay too. It's not like you have to have this great passion or this great, goal in life. It's just, we want to get to know you. And so whatever you write about, make it reflect you. Even if you're totally undecided, you have no idea what you want to do, make that the subject, but make it creative.
Yeah, and don't be ashamed about that. I mean, I think sometimes, I know I did that when I was a student, is I would be like, well, I'm not the football captain, I'm not the cheerleader or whatever. Right. But us as institutions, we're looking to for a diverse set of people to come here. Like we need right. everybody. We don't want just one type of student. Right. We need different kinds of students, because that's what good universities are these people with different interests, different backgrounds, different personalities coming into one place. And that's where these essays can be really helpful or harmful, as some students will try to be someone else or try to feel like, no, I got to force myself to be like this. Mm-hmm. But you don't. You absolutely don't. We really want to see the unique you come out. And honestly, it often rhymes with the rest of the application. As I said before, like sometimes the essay might not make no sense given the rest of the application. Like, why are they writing about sports? They play like one sport for a year. This doesn't make any sense. Whereas the snail farm example I gave you made total sense. His whole life's kind of about biology, and that's what he wants to do for a living, and that's what he applied for. So there's this narrative, this greater narrative that this essay kind of fits into. And so that genuineness of you being genuine to yourself is really important, and don't be scared of being that.
Mm-hmm. And I know Josh did mention this earlier, but you really can tell if somebody else has written the essay. So don't go down that path. Don't. Because we can tell.
You really can.
So yeah, just don't be tempted to do that. I know that people do that, but we can tell. So I would not have that thought if I were you. So, okay, so does it need a title? No, it doesn't need a title. If you want to put a title, great, but it doesn't need one.
Yeah, not necessary.
Yep. Should you use different writing approaches for each essay to demonstrate a variety and make it more interesting to read? We only require one essay, so I can't really speak to that. My guess is yes, you would use different writing approaches for different essays.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm trying to imagine myself at a school that does that. But I wouldn't think it'd be that important, but I think it could help if you did it. I think at the end of the day, we're not gonna be like, oh, these were both, first person narrative. I don't think they're gonna care that much. But it's gonna be the content and the execution.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, those are it for questions.
Well, great. Thank you, everybody. I put up our email addresses on there. If you do have any additional questions that you think of later, feel free to shoot us an email. Thank you so much for joining us over Zoom to talk about college essays, and I wish you good health, and hopefully we'll be able to see you guys again soon.
Yes, thank you. If you have any questions, just email us. We're happy to talk to you more. Thank you for.
Thank you.